How America controls the world. Why every country blames the USA for destroying world peace. The United States has long been seen as a global superpower, a nation that not only shapes its own destiny, but also influences the course of history around the world. But how did America rise to hold such power over other nations? And why is the US often blamed for disturbing world peace? This is a story of power, politics, and influence. A story that takes us through military might, economic dominance, and cultural influence. Let's dive in. The rise of American power. In the aftermath of World War II, the world was in ruins. European nations were weakened, economies were shattered, and an entire generation had been devastated by war. This was America's opportunity. With its economy booming, the US used its resources to help rebuild Europe through the Marshall Plan, which poured billions of dollars into war-torn countries to restore stability. However, this was more than just charity. It was a strategic investment to spread American influence. By stepping up as a leader in the global recovery, the US not only gained allies, but also positioned itself as the dominant power in a new, US-led world order. This was the beginning of what would become American hegemony. Military power and presence. One of the most visible ways the US controls global affairs is through its military. The United States maintains over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. This network of bases allows the US to project its power anywhere, anytime. Whether it's in the Middle East, Asia, or Europe, American troops are ready to respond to any conflict, often giving the US a significant advantage over its rivals. In conflicts from Vietnam to Iraq, the US has intervened, often claiming to spread democracy or combat terrorism. However, these interventions have frequently led to instability, loss of life, and displacement of communities. Many critics argue that the US military's presence worldwide doesn't always bring peace, but rather increases tensions and sparks conflicts. Control over international institutions. The US also wields considerable power in international institutions, such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. While these institutions are supposed to work for global development and peace, the US often uses its influence in these organizations to push its own agenda. For example, the IMF and World Bank frequently lend money to developing countries with strict conditions, often requiring them to adopt policies that align with American interests. This leaves many poor nations in debt to these institutions and dependent on the US for future financial support, effectively giving the US a means to control the economic policies of these nations. The cultural influence, exporting the American dream. American movies, music, technology, and lifestyle are found almost everywhere. This cultural influence, known as soft power, allows the US to shape public opinion around the world. Hollywood films and American brands promote values of freedom, capitalism, and individualism, often leading people to idealize the American way of life. While some see this cultural export as harmless, others believe it undermines local cultures and traditions, replacing them with a consumer-driven American lifestyle. This cultural dominance sometimes leads to resentment as people see their own identities fading under the influence of American media and corporations. The role of intelligence agencies. The CIA and other American intelligence agencies play a significant, albeit often hidden role in US global influence. From orchestrating coups to gathering intelligence on foreign leaders, these agencies work to ensure that American interests are protected worldwide. In countries like Iran, Guatemala, and Chile, the US has intervened through covert operations to overthrow governments that didn't align with American interests. These actions have not only fueled anti-American sentiments, but also raised questions about the ethical boundaries of US foreign policy. Critics argue that this constant interference destabilizes nations and prevents them from forming independent policies, breeding resentment that sometimes turns into radical opposition. The impact of American foreign policy. The US foreign policy is often driven by its need to protect its interests, whether it's securing resources, maintaining alliances, or containing the influence of other powers like Russia and China. However, this approach has often led to long-term instability. For instance, the US invasion of Iraq intended to bring down Saddam Hussein and promote democracy, resulted in a power vacuum that fueled sectarian violence and allowed extremist groups like ISIS to gain ground. Many argue that by prioritizing its interests over global stability, the U.S. contributes to the ongoing conflicts and chaos around the world. The war on terror, for instance, has led to decades of violence and instability in the Middle East, creating a cycle where the U.S. intervention creates problems that only further intervention seems to solve. Why other countries blame the USA? With such a vast reach in almost every part of the world, the U.S. is often blamed when things go wrong. Countries suffering from sanctions, military interventions, or economic policies imposed by American-influenced institutions frequently see the U.S. as the source of their problems. This resentment often fuels anti-American sentiment, as people feel their sovereignty and right to self-determination are constantly being undermined. Many believe that American interference prevents nations from developing their unique political and social systems. The consequences can be seen in regions like the Middle East, where years of U.S. intervention have left societies struggling to recover from conflict and division. Conclusion. In summary, America's control over the world is a complex web woven through military power, economic influence, cultural dominance, intelligence operations, and control over global institutions. While the U.S. often claims to promote freedom and democracy, its actions are not without consequences. This pursuit of global influence has, in many cases, led to instability and resentment, causing many countries to blame the U.S. for disturbing world peace. The question remains, can the world find a balance where nations respect each other's sovereignty, or will the U.S. continue to shape global affairs in its image, regardless of the costs? This is a question for all of us, as the actions of one nation impact the future of our interconnected world